Workbenches are simply areas of the UI which can be populated by anything that you want. A place to collect your favorite scripts, macros, tools, presets, and commands. In the Modo layout, they exist in 4 locations: as a tab, as part of the Modo tool cluster, in the top right hand corner next to kits, and in the collapsible viewports above and below the main viewport. At the most basic level, they're an area for collecting your favorite tools and commands. So if I open up a tool palette, hit Edit Workbench, there's a button to the right of the workbench which is Pick to Add. If I click that, as I mouse over the UI, you can see all the buttons that are able to be added to a workbench are highlighted green. So if I click on one, it will then get added to that workbench. If I want to add multiple tools to the workbench, click Pick to Add and hold down Shift, and then I can just keep clicking on tools. If I want to add a command, I can come to the command list, click Pick to Add, and I can choose from the list. You can choose from a list of recently run commands. You can also add channels, and you can even add presets. And when I deselect Edit Workbench, these tools are now available to be run directly from the workbench. Where workbenches really come into their own is when dealing with custom tools. So if I make the pipeline visible, if I create a tool preset, so if I run the Move tool, I have a certain action center and a certain fall off, and I want to save that, I can go to Edit Workbench and from the drop down choose Add Current Tool Pipe and Save Preset. I give it a name, hit OK, and it'll be added to the workbench. From the workbench, you can then right click on the button, add a name, a tooltip, and even an icon. So then when you turn off Edit Workbench and click on the button, the tool preset will be loaded. And the same thing happens with macros. So if I select a polygon here and record a macro and do a few bevels, stop recording the macro, I can then go to Edit Workbench and from the drop down choose to either save the macro to a file or to the config. Save it to a file, give it a name, hit save, and that will be added. So now if I select a polygon and run the script, the bevel will be added. If the script editor is open and you want to save the script, click Edit Workbench and from the drop down choose Add Script from Script Editor, save it, and it will be added. Also, if you've got a script on disk that you want to load, from the drop down you can choose Add Script File. There are also tools for helping you to organize your workbench. So with Edit Workbench active, you can click and drag any of the controls to reorganize them. From the drop down, you can add dividers and drag and drop those to different locations. And you can also add dividers with labels. Drag those to certain areas to generate collapsible sections. And if you want to delete a button, simply right click on the button and choose Delete. And if you want to save your workbench, in case you change versions of Modo or you want to share the form, from the drop down you can just click Save Workbench Form and choose the location to save it. The horizontal workbenches work in much the same way and are particularly useful when dealing with kits. So by default, all of your kits are placed in this standard location. But now with workbenches, you're free to put them wherever you want. So if I activate Edit Workbench and from the drop down choose Pick to Add, I can then just click on one of these icons and it'll be added to that workbench. If I want to put some here, I can add them in. The biggest difference between the horizontal workbench and the vertical workbench is when it comes to dividers. So by default, all the icons in a horizontal workbench are ganged together, but if you want to create a gap between them, just right click on the icon and you have options to either choose a gap before and after. So if I choose gap after, it'll separate that button.